We all think about death on occasion. Sometimes this leads to us becoming hypochondriacs for a bit. Other times we think about what happens in the afterlife. If you lived in 17th century London, there were some truly frightening and bizarre ways you might have died. From records collected during the time period, we found some oddly named causes of death from the 1600s. Perhaps you would die of ague or jaw vein, or worst of all, the king's evil. We're going to look at some of the most unusual causes of death in the 17th century London and what they entail. The causes of death are going to be broken down into different categories, starting with basic pathogens and ending with the weirdest cause of death. By the time we get to the end, you'll be wondering how anyone survived the 17th century London at all. Epidemiology and other medical fields had a long way to go in the 1600s. This meant that curable diseases of today were much more likely to kill you at this time. Even still, the names given to some of the diseases are perplexing. If you were to die from ague, it means you would most likely have had a fever. Your muscles would ache and you would have some symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. This was because ague was the name given to malaria. Now we have anti-malarial drugs that'll help someone recover from the pathogen. But in 1632 London, people were not so lucky. In 1632, 348 people died from bloody flux. What this identification refers to is bloody diarrhea and dysentery. The cause of death in today's medical terms was most likely from a disease like cholera. There were also a plethora of pox that killed people. Sometimes smallpox was identified as flox when death occurred. Other people died from what was labeled as French pox, which was syphilis. For really unlucky people, they might have died from the king's evil. This was an infection of the neck glands. Today, we know this bacterial infection as tuberculosis. Many parts of the world have eradicated the disease by using antibiotic regimens. However, in 17th century London, the only thing that was said to cure the disease was the touch of a king. Getting an antibiotic prescription from your doctor and sticking with it is a much more effective way of surviving the king's evil, just in case you were wondering. Another bacterial infection that was recorded was jaw vein. This cause of death could have also been called jaw fallen or lockjaw. Regardless of what the name was recorded as, they all were the same disease, tetanus. It's a bacterial infection that causes massive muscle spasms. These contractions often happen in the jaw and neck, which causes interference with breathing and can lead to death, hence the name jaw vein. Although viruses and bacteria caused many people to die in London during the 1600s, sometimes the body destroyed itself. A lot of this had to do with lifestyles of the day and a lack of understanding around healthy diets and cleanliness. If you died of apoplex, it meant that you were most likely paralyzed at the time of death. However, this was not what killed you. Instead, a rupture or clogging of blood, leading to an aneurysm or internal bleeding, would have been the cause of your death. If dropsy was recorded as your cause of death, it meant that, like with apoplex, your circulatory system let you down and caused massive swelling of a body part. This is what we call edema today, but it was identified as dropsy in 17th century London. This next cause of death is a little gross, so if you have a weak stomach, prepare yourself. According to records, 13 people died of fistula in 1632 London. Fistula was an anal abscess that became infected. This caused the anal cavity to fill with pus. The infection could be cleared out, but if left untreated, it could also lead to death. Fistula would have been an incredibly uncomfortable and messy way for those 13 people to have died. Another cause of death that comes from problems in the rectum would have been identified as piles. This identification referred to hemorrhoids, which are inflamed veins in the anus that are caused from strained bowel movements. This condition can also develop during pregnancy or from obesity. If the bleeding resulted from piles or fistula was left untreated, the person would die. One recorded cause of death that was not super specific was purples. This referred to someone dying due to widespread bruising. Purples would have been caused by blunt force trauma, a number of pathogens, or hemophilia, which affects the body's ability to clot blood. By identifying the cause of death as purples, all the doctor was saying that there were bruises on the body. 7 people in the year 1632 died from quinsy. This was an inflammation of the tonsils. Most likely it was what we know as tonsillitis today. However, a tonsillectomy would have been much harder with the lack of instruments and medical knowledge of the day. When left untreated, those 7 people died from tonsils obstructing their breathing pathway, causing them to suffocate to death. A final cause of death related to the failure of the body was called tympany. This referred to an abdominal growth, normally a tumor. It would lead to bloating of the abdomen due to trapped air or gas. The person would swell up like a balloon. While being checked for tympany, a doctor would thump the swollen part of the body, which would create a hollow sound not unlike a timpani drum. This brings us to the most bizarre identification and causes of death from 1632 London. Some of this stuff is almost too crazy to believe. It's hard growing up. All children take a nasty fall or hurt themselves at some point while growing up. It's a part of learning. But for the most part, in today's society, we look out for the younger generations of our species. However, in 17th century London, being a child seemed to come with some unique challenges and dangers. As discussed before, medicine and medical knowledge had a long way to go in 17th century London. That meant that many infants' cause of death were identified as childbed or chrysomes. Childbed was a death that occurred shortly after birth from complications in the delivery process. Chrysomes was the death of an unbaptized infant, or one that was less than a month old. These identifications in and of themselves do not provide a detailed explanation for the death, but since chrysomes was the highest cause of death recorded at the time, it was clearly dangerous to be a newborn in 1632 London. One of the crazier causes of death recorded during this time was overlaid. This referred to when a parent accidentally rolled over onto their baby while they were sleeping and smothered the infant. This was an incredibly sad and unfortunate cause of death, yet it was recorded several times during this time period in London. Also, the same category as overlaid was starved at nurse. This referred to the baby receiving insufficient amounts of breast milk or not gaining the weight required from the milk it was given to survive. Either way, it was a sad day when any infant or child's cause of death needed to be recorded. Other than disease and failure of a body system, there were also other causes of death that were quite peculiar. Kidney stones are incredibly painful. If they grow large enough, they need to be surgically removed. When the cause of death for someone was recorded as a cut of the stone, it referred to someone dying as a result of the surgery to remove bladder or kidney stones from the body. The distinction here is that the stones are not what killed the person, but the cut that the doctor made, or an unsuccessful surgery, is what led to the person's demise. Today, we refer to mental health as a serious aspect of life that needs to be addressed and treated with care. However, in 17th century London, very little was actually known about how the brain worked and different mental illnesses. 5 people in 1632 were identified as dying from lunatic. This was the term given to someone with mental health issues. There's no distinction between what mental state the person was in. However, there was a stigma against anyone who was suffering from an ailment of the mind. Not understanding what was happening in someone's mind led people to fear going insane. The main worries seemed to be that death as a lunatic would not allow for certain religions or deathbed rituals to occur before the person passed away. This brings us to the most peculiar causes of death in 17th century London. The names given to these causes of death and the causes themselves are baffling. In 1632, one person's cause of death was recorded as affrighted. This literally means that the person was scared to death. It's unclear what actually caused the person to become so frightened, but it must have been incredibly scary to literally have frightened them to death. Another really weird cause of death was listed as planet. This did not mean that they were somehow crushed by an entire planet. Instead, this cause of death referred to being planet-struck. It was believed at the time a severe illness or paralysis could have been caused by the influence of one of the celestial bodies in the sky. There is no scientific evidence that the motion of planets or stars has any effect on the aspects of someone's life, but in 17th century London, it would seem that some doctors believed that the cosmos could directly cause someone to become sick and die. We're not sure why the stars and planets would concern themselves with making someone sick on planet Earth, but apparently it happened in 1632 London 13 times. As a side note, this was not the first time a celestial body was associated with an ailment. It was believed that the moon and its cycles could cause people to literally go insane. This is where the word lunatic comes from. The prefix luna means moon, and lunatic refers to insanity created by the different phases of the moon. One cause of death that is still shrouded in mystery is rising of the lights. It most likely refers to an illness in the lungs. Perhaps the lights referred to the lightweight organs that were lungs, and the rising up referred to the movement of the chest during severe coughing. It's unclear what would distinguish rising of the lights from other respiratory illnesses other than it sounds nicer than death by lung infection. 86 people died from surfeit in 1632 London. This is a surprisingly high number for what surfeit actually is. Surfeit is death by overeating or gluttony. By eating too much, the person could have died due to dehydration from vomiting excessively. This cause of death may have referred to people who died from being overweight or diseases connected from obesity such as diabetes or heart failure. It's also been suggested that the surfeit could refer to someone who consumed too much alcohol, passed out, and then died by choking on their own vomit. Either way, surfeit would not have been a pleasant way to go. Many of the causes of death in 17th century London are still around today, but are not as prevalent as back then. The names of certain diseases and complications, however, have been changed over time with our understanding of how pathogens and the human body works. However, it's still puzzling that some of the causes of death even occurred. Just be thankful that you didn't live in 1632, where you could have died by planet, piles, or rising of the lights. Now check out worst jobs that will literally kill you, or go and watch diseases that will kill you the quickest.